Hey there, welcome to the behind the scenes for my short film, Just Once. Before we get started, I just have to say that there will be spoilers for the film. If you haven't seen it, then I would really appreciate it if you go give that a watch, then come back here. Or if you don't care, you can just not click away. Whatever makes you happy. Anyways, making this behind the scenes look type thing took a bit longer than expected, so I hope you all enjoy and maybe even learn something. So, with that said, let the show begin. I started writing Just Once in December of 2017 after finishing my first semester of college. Before I even started writing, I knew I wanted to step out of my comfort zone in any way I could. Previously, I've technically only done short scenes rather than short films. This time, I wanted to try and tell a more complete story, something with a beginning, middle, and end. I finished the first script in February of 2018. I say finished because I honestly didn't stop rewriting the story until I finished editing the film. In case you don't know, Just Once tells a story about two brothers who rob a diner in order to get the money they need for their mom's cancer surgery. The idea came to me after my mom told me how at one point there was a cancer scare. No one knew except her and my dad because they didn't want anyone to worry. After she told me that, I kept thinking about it. What if it wasn't just a scare? What would we do if it was real, knowing how expensive treatment can be? So I put those emotions on a paper and created Arthur and Raphael, two brothers who are so desperate to keep their mom alive for as long as possible that they do the horrible act of stealing from a local business. Should have gone for a big franchise, am I right? It was very important for me that they had good intentions that result in horrible consequences. My favorite part when it came to writing was writing the dynamic between Arthur and Raphael. At first, Arthur, while hesitant, trusts that his older brother knows what he's doing. He looks up to him and wants to help in any way he can. After the robbery, Arthur starts having some serious doubts about Raphael. He doesn't want to confront him or anything, so he just kind of bottles everything in. And by the end of the film, Arthur goes all out on Raph, leaving Raph alone. In the very last scene, Raph lets his bottled emotions out, very much like how Arthur did in the scene before. Both characters end up with nothing but a pile of money that will mean nothing in a year. Alright, so the script is done. Great. There were tons of drafts, some of which ended with a big chase scene that required me to get police cars and stunt drivers. Then I realized I probably should be very realistic for what is possible for a 19-year-old. Well, at the time, 18-year-old. Either way, the hardest part is over. Now it's time to max out all my credit cards. Like I mentioned a few seconds ago, I wanted to force myself out of my comfort zone. This meant getting real actors and not just friends. Complete strangers who had no idea how reliable they could be, but I'll get back to this later. We found all of our actors using a website called Breakdown Express and a local actors page I found on Facebook.
So just wanted to make this little vlog type thing. It's April 19th, 2018. We start filming in like 2 months from now, so that's a little spooky. We posted the casting call last Wednesday, and honestly I'm surprised at how many people want to be in the film, but at the same time it's kind of scary because it's like they're trusting me to make something good. So that's spooky because I'm used to working with people I already know, like my friends, so it's like if we make something kind of crappy, then it's just between us. It's also the first time I'm working with like older actors. Normally I have 16, 17-year-olds playing FBI agents, which I don't recommend if you're being serious, but or I mean, if that's what you want.
Instead of spending time and money renting out a place for actors to come and audition, I had everyone email me their audition reels and we just went from there. I wish I could say that was the hardest part, but like I expected from the beginning, the hardest part was finding a diner we could film in with a very, very small budget. I had saved up money from my part-time job at a movie theater, so you can probably sort of guess how much I had. Sierra, who acted as my producer and assistant director, called over a dozen diners, and they all gave us the same two answers. Yeah, of course you can use our diner. Yeah, just give me your email and we'll go from there. Yeah, I'm writing it down right now. Yeah. Okay. Sure, bye. Assholes. Or they would just say, no. There was one diner that legitimately said yes, but it cost over $2,000 to rent it out for 2 nights. After every single diner said no, I almost lost hope. Then I miraculously found one more diner we haven't called that was within the hour drive. Sierra called and I was sitting next to her, anxiously waiting for the answer, and then she said yes. I couldn't believe it, but the person said yes and at a very fair price for what we were getting. I still had to ask for a loan for my brother, but luckily that can be paid off with nothing but some brotherly love.
What'd you say?
The hardest location was found and we had our cast. Now I needed a crew. I grew up making movies, mostly by myself, so I'm used to doing everything by myself. But this was a 30-page script and we only had 5 days for principal photography. About 6 of my friends donated their time to help, and I was able to get 2 more crew members, including BTS, through my college's film club Facebook page. As you can tell, Facebook really helped. But anyways, now on to production. Day 1 was absolutely terrifying. Like I mentioned, I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone. I've said that so many times already. Sorry. And one of the ways I did that was by getting actual actors. Not only was I already nervous about directing strangers, but we also had no choice but to film the diner scenes that day due to scheduling, and that was nerve-wracking by itself. Sierra and I went there to look at the location during its business hours, but because the place was filled with customers and workers, I didn't have the chance to go through the place and figure out blocking or any of that. Many mistakes were made that day, one of them being a fill light. We used skirts to shape the light from the ceiling lights, but that gave the actors raccoon eyes, which I completely hated. Luckily, I caught this fairly early in the production and had the chance to fix it, but as you can see in the final film, there are some shots with some inconsistent lighting. We had a hard out at 1 a.m., which is when we would start filming all the scenes that happened outside the diner. We used my aperture lights, which were essential since they were battery powered. We wrapped up at around 5 a.m. and all went home. Other than all the bad stuff that went wrong, day 1 wasn't as bad as I expected. Are there things I wish I did differently? Yeah, of course, but you know what? I was happy I made it through the night without passing out. I started off the day feeling nervous as hell and ended up feeling fine. Everyone got along, there weren't major issues going on, so far so good. Day 2 was pretty much the same as day 1, however now we had our armed gunman, or Chandler as he's referred to in the script. This was Nolan's only day on set, so I had to make sure we got everything we needed from him. And this included the squib shot. Quick backstory, so I love practical effects. I think that 90% of the time it looks way better than any visual effect, so my friends and I made a DIY squib using an air compressor and parts from Home Depot. We spent maybe 2-3 days in total building and testing out the rig. We made some test videos and it seemed to work fine on our 3rd try. 1 and go! Alex! Love me, don't, bitch. Alex! I think it would have worked if it was lined up. Bang! Bang! We were sure we had it figured out, and then Murphy's Law decided to barge in on set and slap me across the face over and over and over. What the fuck? Of course, the squib didn't work, so after many hilarious attempts, and only 10 minutes before we had to leave, I decided that we needed to be respectful to the owner and just call it. Luckily, I decided to film Nolan acting out the entire scene without the squib, so we can get a feel for how he was going to fall. This is what ended up being in the final film, and it looks way better than I ever expected. So Nolan, if you're watching this, thanks for doing that, because you saved my ass right there. All I did was add a few sound effects and cut a few frames out, and we had a pretty convincing death. My biggest takeaway from the dreaded squib was that if you have a rig you're going to be using on set, check to make sure it works like 20 times, and when you think you've done it enough, check it another 20 times, and then prepare yourself with a plan B, because no matter how confident you are and how sure you are, it is going to fail because the universe, for some reason, does not like filmmakers. Anyways, we wrapped up our day, or technically our night, at around 6 a.m. I went home, unpacked all my equipment, left it to charge, laid in bed at 7:30, only to wake up at 11 a.m. to start getting ready for all the scenes that took place inside the house. Day 3 was hectic. I had to pick up some more equipment from a rental place an hour away from our shooting location, and this led to me being late on set. Yeah, showing up and seeing the actors sitting there waiting for you is not ideal at all, and I still think back to that and just completely cringe at myself. My goal was to be the first one there, like it should be for a cast and crew of 10, but I ended up being the last person to show up. Anyways, I met the amazing Anna Watt, who played the mom in the film. I originally scheduled to film 2 scenes that day, but Anna had to leave the following morning back to New Orleans, so I decided that instead of rushing through her entire scene, we would spend the rest of the day focusing on that one part, since she was the one actor who would be the most difficult to get back for reshoots. As fun as this could have been, it wasn't. The main reason? The heat. We were filming in Texas midsummer with the AC off, and about 6 people crowded up together in a small room. You might be wondering, why in the hell would we turn the AC off? Well, the reason is because we needed to get good, quiet audio. I honestly felt like I was directing in hell. Filming outside with the mosquitoes everywhere sounded like heaven at the time, and thankfully I had such an amazing cast and crew that we pulled through and finished our day. We were all very sweaty, but thanks to the power of water, we survived. Again, I have to give a big shout out to Anna, because not only did she really research her character beforehand, but she was in those warm blankets while we filmed, so all of this for a teenager who just wanted to make a movie, so thank you. However, I do want to say, please be safe on set. Yes, it was warm, but we made sure we had plenty of cold waters around. Having someone pass out or get sick will be so much worse and is not worth any film.
He's like, can you go? Can you keep out of the room?
Day 4 was everything else we missed inside the house, including the big confrontation scene. We used a fog machine to add some more visual interest to these shots here and give it a more hazy, almost dreamlike feel. Plus, I think fog is cool. Fun little fact, we didn't have a fog machine at first, so we tried using dry ice, which failed miserably. We wasted way too much time trying to get the ice to produce a nice foggy look, so we just fed it to a nearby lake the next morning.
Oh. Ooh. That's cool.
Anyways, the living room scenes were simple and straightforward. We didn't have any major problems here. Afterwards, we moved our equipment outside to film the climax of the film. I lit the scene with 3 softboxes and my 2 aperture lights. The goal here was to make sure the shadows weren't completely dark. I wanted to give the background a bit of depth, so adding these small accent lights made a big difference. Looking back at it, I wish I diffused the lights a lot more, and I wish I thought about adding some more color contrast. We were in a house with orange street lights, so I could have done it, but didn't think of that on the spot, which is why if you're directing and shooting your film, make sure to write down what you want before you go out to film that. Communicating with yourself is just as important as communicating with your DP, director, or any other lead. The main issue this day were the swarm of mosquitoes that ambushed my lights and the AC. We filmed at my friend's house and his parents were, obviously, very warm without the AC, so we turned it back on and had to quickly film every time the machine stopped. Unfortunately, there were times when it would start mid-take and you can hear the AC in the final film, but luckily it wasn't as bad as I thought it could be, thanks to some post-production. Next up on the schedule were the car scenes. Since we were already behind because of day 3, we decided to film half of the driving scenes that night. So, we did all the shots that required the camera to stay on the hood of the car. We rented out the Matthews Master car mount from a local rental house in Dallas. To save up time, we would set the camera up once and would get both the opening and post-robbery scenes back to back, then repeat that process with each shot. While Dan was driving, I was cramped up in the back of the car giving directions to the actors. Obviously, I couldn't see their performances, so we did many takes of everything to make sure I had options during post-production. Also, if you're doing driving scenes, make sure you have a driver in front and behind the car you're filming with, because it's pretty dangerous, and don't do it if there's a lot of cars, and just be safe with that, because normally you would have whatever this is, I guess like a big trailer hauling the car along with the camera rigs, but we're poor, so we didn't do that. Now pay attention, because there's a good reason why I'm telling you this part. So we got back at home at around 5:40 a.m. We were all exhausted, we packed up our equipment, and we went home to get a few more hours of sleep. Some of the crew members drove an hour to help me out, so huge props to Jared, Justin, and Kevin for still wanting to help me after the first day. Also, if you can avoid driving sleepy, please do that, and don't let any cast or crew drive home if you really don't think they're in the condition to drive home. So that's my other safety tip for today. On to day 5. Day 5 started off with the alley scene, and just like most indie films, we didn't have any type of permit to be filming on city property. So we had to be really fast, and luckily, we were able to set up my 2 aperture lights and the camera rig at my house. So we didn't have to worry about spending time setting up equipment at the alley. And no, Aperture is in no way paying me to say this. Hell, I can guarantee they don't even know that I exist. I just really like their lights. But anyways, like expected when filming in public, there were a few people who thought it would be really funny to loudly yell at us during takes.
You want to talk to me about being quiet? Exactly. There's nothing to say.
After patiently working out some sound issues, we went off to go film the rest of the driving scenes, and this is when shit hit the fan. So we went back to the house where we've been filming for the last 2 days, and that acted as our home base. All we needed to do now is set up the car mount, and then we could start. Dozer, who acted as my first AC, started setting up the camera rig, and then I heard him say the one thing I really didn't want to hear that night.
Renee, where's the rods?
It wasn't inside the bag where we thought it was, so then everyone started looking for that piece of rod. And I swear we tore Mendoza's house apart trying to look for the thing, and after 30 minutes I realized we probably weren't gonna find it. We needed to return the mount the next morning, so there was also that. So Chandler, who did production audio, and I went back to my house to grab a DIY car mount I made for a texting and driving PSA in my sophomore year of high school. We went in my garage and guess what? It wasn't there. So plan B was scrapped. At this point, I did not know what to do, and I think that's the scariest feeling any director can feel. I didn't even think this could happen, so there was no plan B. I refused to green screen any car scenes because of PTSD I had from an earlier project, Meanwhile, everyone is back at Mendoza's house, still looking for something that probably isn't even there. It's nearly midnight, cast and crew were tired, and I definitely wasn't feeling good. I started talking with Chandler about other solutions, and then I told him something happened the night before while I was driving back home. Right as I was getting on the ramp to the freeway, I saw a black object hit my windshield. I immediately pulled over on the side of the road, thinking it was some piece of equipment someone forgot. I got out the car and just glanced at the road to see if I can see whatever it was I saw, if I even saw anything. Nothing caught my eye, so I left. I really thought I was just hallucinating from how exhausted I was. After Chandler heard the story, he told me that we should probably go back to the ramp and see if maybe the rod was the black object that hit my windshield. We had nothing to lose. In fact, this gave me a bit more time to try and figure something out. So we went back, we got off the car, we started shining our flashlights everywhere. Nothing. I was ready to leave, and then I saw it. I found the rod in near perfect condition, and I honestly couldn't believe it. I turned and I yelled at Chandler, "We got it." We were so happy and filled with so much adrenaline. I'm telling you, we were like two 5th graders who just found Playboy magazines in their school dumpster. Which did happen before, but that's another story. We drove back to Mendoza's house and told everyone the great news. Then Sierra came up to us and asked, "Where's the other one?" "There's 2 missing." So Chandler, Justin, our BTS, and I went back to the ramp and found the other one. This rod was way more damaged than the other one. You could tell many cars ran it over. It was still a miracle we were able to find it there, but unfortunately I had to pay $40 for repairs. So that's another $40 I had to ask for my brother. Anyways, we got both rods and finished our day at 5:40 a.m. Again. We said goodbye to our lead actor, Isaiah, then packed up all of our equipment. The car mount had to be returned by 11 a.m., so after the cast and crew left, Sierra, Chandler, Mendoza, Dan, Justin, and I went to the diner where we filmed to go celebrate. We had one more day to go. I could almost see the finish line. After breakfast, Dan and Justin went home to get some sleep, and the rest of us went to go return the rentals. We took the hour road trip to return the car mount. We were all sleep deprived, so we weren't, how should I put this? We weren't very sane. So, and here's some footage I got.
Oh, hey man, it's cool game. It's nice. It is a park. It is raining, but we gotta go. I got it over.
Please save me from Mendoza.
Say you want this.
Help me. Help me. I have GPS. What?
We got back home at around 11 a.m. and went to sleep, only to wake back up in 3 hours to film the ending. And that leads me to the final day of principal photography. Day 6 was just the ending scene. Now, obviously, we couldn't film in the middle of the street, so we cheated. We filmed the scenes in the parking lot of a local playground and used my YN360 lightsaber to act as a stoplight, and that was it. Again, no huge problems other than the regular being behind schedule and noise from other civilians on the street, but we had made our film. We were done. Any filmmaker can tell you how good it feels to call it. We were still missing some pickup shots, but they weren't anything too difficult, and I could do them mostly by myself. A month after we wrapped production, we did 2 days of reshoots, one of them being back at the diner. The reason why I decided to rent out the diner for another night was because I was not happy with some of the footage from our first day of shooting. What I learned is that just because we shaped the ceiling light does not mean we didn't need any other lights, which sounds obvious, but I'm stupid, so. I mentioned this earlier, but once I added a fill light, it improved the shot way, like a lot more, and made it look so much better. There were also some shots of Nolan that I felt could be better from a technical standpoint. As for the second day of the reshoot, we refilmed part of the ending with Dan, just because we already had the anamorphic adapter for that weekend, and I felt like the footage we got the first time could have been better, and it was. Also, we tried the squib again. It did not work. Oof. At the end of the day, this was the most stressful and fun shoot I've ever had. The cast was amazing. My biggest fear when starting was hiring actors who would be troublesome or who wouldn't know how to take direction, but these guys blew me away. I am so grateful they wanted to be a part of this project, and same thing goes for all the crew members. I knew most people who helped out, and the ones I met on the first day of production were so easy to get along with that I felt like I've known them forever. The day after we wrapped production, I actually had some post-filming sadness. I was finally able to sleep for more than 3 hours, but I just felt bummed out. It was over. I missed being out there with all these great people, making a film with an extremely low budget, which, I mean, that wasn't that fun, but no one was paid. We were all simply there for the love of what we do. So huge thanks to everyone. Jared, Justin, Kevin, Diamond, Fred, Mendoza, Chandler, Sierra, you guys were such an awesome crew, and thank you so much for helping me make this film a reality. And to the cast, Isaiah, Dan, Javier, Nolan, and Anna, I met all of you for the first time the week of filming, and yet it felt like I've worked with all of you before. Thank you for being awesome, and thank you for making the characters I wrote come to life. Obviously, if I could, I would have loved to pay everyone, but sometimes it's impossible if you want to get your film made. If that's the case for your film, triple check that you have plenty of water and snacks.
Hydration is key.
No one will want to help if you aren't considerate enough to make sure they're properly fed and hydrated. If you're going to take anything away from this video, make sure it's that. So production is officially done. Let's jump into the part where I sit down and spend hundreds of hours in my dark room staring at a computer screen. I spent a few days over the course of a month editing in Premiere Pro. But before I started that, I took all of my video and audio clips and synced everything up using Red Giant's Pluralize, which for anyone who still syncs clip by clip in Premiere, you have to get this. You will save yourself an insane amount of time. Like, instead of spending your time doing a boring task of syncing, you can climb a mountain, you could train to fight a bear, be Leonardo DiCaprio, or even make another short film. I might have exaggerated there. Anyways, once I had a locked picture cut, I took the film into Audition where I added in the Foley, sound effects, music, and mixed the entire thing. I know some people mix their short film right in Premiere, and I think that's cool, but every time I try to do that, I end up feeling too cramped in. I just feel more comfortable mixing on Audition and adding effects to entire tracks rather than each individual clip. For any visual effects, I used good old After Effects. There were the muzzle flashes, or flash, the artery popping, getting rid of the red tracking dots I completely backed out on, and a few other super small effects. And funny enough, the hardest part of post-production was what most people would think to be the easiest: exporting. We had rented out the Texas Theater to premiere the film for cast, crew, friends, and family. The premiere was set to be on Wednesday, October 3rd, and I finished the film on September 30th. I pressed export, and the expected export time turned out to be 27 hours. I thought to myself, alright, I have 2.5 days to get it exported. It'll be okay. When it got to around 60%, the computer crashed. Now it's Monday night. In less than 48 hours, the screening was happening. There were many people who were planning on going, and all I could think of was how embarrassing and disappointing it would be to have to message everyone and tell them, sorry, premiere didn't export in time. I had to cancel the event. Alright, what else can I do but try to re-export it? This time I lowered the target bitrate. It hurt, but maybe if I lowered the file size, it would help. Nope, not really. On Tuesday afternoon, the computer crashed at 95%. In less than 24 hours, I needed to go deliver the files to the projectionist. At this point, I was beyond terrified and decided to write down the message I planned on sending out, telling everyone that I had to cancel the premiere. You have to keep trying until the very end, so I tried exporting the file again, this time with a target bitrate of 5 megabits per second. I started off with 60 megabits per second since it was a 2K file, and ended up going down to 5. And may I remind you, this was being shown on a big theater screen. I'm sure many of you watching can imagine the pain. Well, that night before I went to sleep, it was around 40%. I had 10 alarms in a span of 7 hours to wake me up and check. That way, if the computer crashed, I could simply re-export it at 1 megabit per second.
Go to sleep. Or else.
So it's still exporting, but there's a chance that it could crash at 99%, like some of my other projects. So I don't know what to do, but here's an update. Did you catch that? No? Well, too bad! My fourth alarm goes off, and it's 5 a.m., and Premiere is at 100%. I kept waiting for that little exporting box to disappear and confirm everything. Nope. It just stayed there. I anxiously looked back at the screen. I tried going back to sleep for another 15 minutes, but couldn't. Then the little box disappeared. We were done and ready to go. You can imagine the sense of relief. I looked through the file and everything was looking good. The image quality wasn't bad either. I was expecting it to look like a Video Now movie, but it was definitely watchable. 4 hours later, when I went to test the footage, I sat in the dark movie theater by myself and I watched the movie. I was very mixed with emotions. I was glad I was sitting there watching something we all worked so hard on. I was glad the film exported, but I could personally tell the drop in quality. It felt like watching a 720p YouTube video on a 4K TV, and that's what it reminded me of. Not bad, but it's not great. I'm sure many of you think I was being picky, and you're right, but I couldn't help but feel that. Oh, and once I was there, I also heard a few mess ups I did in the final mix. The footsteps were too loud at some points, and it made me hate myself even more that night. But I went up on stage with my 3 best friends and presented the film. Unfortunately, we don't have any video or any pictures from that night, but it was insane, at least for me. There might have been around 70 to 100 people, I'm not sure, in there, which was way more than I expected. It seemed like people liked it, and overall, it was a really fun time. We had posters we sold, and shockingly enough, we sold all 12 of them to the point where we took a few orders. It was nothing big, we made no money doing this. It was a free event. In fact, we lost more money than anything, but it was worth it. A few people donated to our PayPal, which was a big help in sending it to film festivals. Peter and Lonergan, thank you guys so much. You know what you did. Thank you. I knew this film wouldn't have a good chance to make it into festivals since it was too long, and I live on a strict rule that I have to make my own opportunities. If festivals won't show our film, then we'll premiere it ourselves. So my 3 best friends and I split the cost for the theater and had a blast that night. I kind of rambled on, so sorry about that, but that's pretty much it. As of March 2019, we've gotten rejected from 4 of the 6 film festivals we submitted to. Yeah, it sucks, but this is a 30-minute film and we didn't do early submission for any of them. Plus, I didn't make this movie with the goal to show it in festivals and hope to be recognized. It'd be nice, but I made this movie mostly because I physically needed to. I wanted to make something a lot more personal than my previous work. I wanted to step out of my comfort zone and do things I've been dreaming of doing since I was 10 or 9, either one. But most importantly, I wanted to make this film so I could learn from my mistakes and get a little closer to that big feature film that I plan on making one day. We started filming June 18th of 2018. It's been nearly a year since production started, so what took so long? Well, life. I have college, homework, 2 jobs, freelance work, and somewhat of a social life that I had to keep up with. It would have been easier to hire an editor, colorist, sound designer, sound mixer, VFX artist, and all that good stuff, but that's impossible for filmmakers like myself who barely have enough money to pay for gas sometimes. Which is why I cannot recommend enough to learn a little bit of everything. If you want to make films, I feel like it's important that you learn how to shoot, how to edit, do sound work, color grade, color correct, and maybe even learn some visual effects. You will save yourself a lot of time, money, and headaches. You do not have to be a pro at everything, but the basic knowledge will get you far. I've seen people who want to be directors but don't make their first movie until they find a cinematographer, editor, colorist, VFX artist, etc. that are willing to work for free and help them out. You shouldn't depend on someone else to get your film made. Make the film yourself, even if your mom has to help out, which I've done. And with time, you will get better and better, then eventually you can let go of each job and hire someone as your budget increases with every project. With that said, I am not a pro, like, at all. I'm not even 20 years old. I'm not saying everything that comes out of my mouth is fact. I'm just giving my 2 cents and telling you the main mistakes I see in filmmakers my age or younger filmmakers or people at school. That concludes the behind the scenes for Just Once. It's been nearly a year since I started production, but it feels like it was just last week. Since then, I've rewatched the film a couple of times, pulled a George Lucas and reshot 2 aerial shots, and have acknowledged the mistakes I made in the film. When I watch it today, all I can see are the areas where I need improvement. I know exactly what I would do differently today. I'm not a film student, but making this short really was like going to my own, much cheaper film school. I hope you all liked this short, and if it wasn't your thing, then that's completely fine. I hope you at least found this BTS enjoyable, and who knows, maybe you learned a thing or two. If there are any young filmmakers watching this, I think it's important that you learn this. You will not be happy with anything you make for a while. I've been making films since I was 9 or 10, and I can't think of a project I've ever been completely proud of. Honestly, I don't even know if I ever will be completely satisfied because the imagination is limitless, but real life isn't. Being a filmmaker is emotionally draining, but if you have that idea that keeps bothering you and a vision that you keep thinking about 24/7, then go out and make that vision come true. Make that film as best as you possibly can, make as many mistakes as you can, and learn from them. You will never learn if you can't acknowledge what you did wrong. Then make your next film and repeat the same steps. Again, these are completely my opinions. Take it as advice, not fact. I just hope that this video can make it out to one person and inspire them to get up or go write or film something. Lastly, I want to thank you, the viewer, for taking the time to watch this video. Time is the most valuable thing anyone has, and the idea that you spent over half an hour watching me ramble means a lot to me, so thank you. If you have any questions for me, please don't hesitate to comment below and I'll either answer them or make a follow-up Q&A. Either one. I'll end this video with a quote from one of my favorite films. It's something that doesn't just apply to filmmaking, but life in general, at least to me. Extra points if you can guess the film where it's from. The quote goes like this: "Visions are worth fighting for. Why spend your life making someone else's dreams? Thank you."
My left eye.
Do you guys have scripts?
Can you smell what Darren is cooking?